Hello, and welcome to the Rebecoming the One Symposium. I am Vanessa Nixon, and I'm here with Martha Alter Hines today, co-hosting week one, The Divine Feminine. And I am so excited today that we get to speak with Katrina Blanca. So welcome, Katrina.
Hi, and I just realized, just for people to have an easier time knowing who I am, I also put my surname. So privileged and honored to be with you ladies and looking forward to whatever wants to unfold.
This is going to be just a really lovely talk, I can tell. And I want to give everybody just a little bit of background on you. So I would love to read a little bit about who you are and what you do. Katrina Blanca lives and works in southern Germany. As a storyteller, her main focus is finding traces of the divine feminine in traditional stories and retelling them. Katrina also works as a healer. The combining of story and sound for healing is her joy and passion. And today she's going to be talking about traces of her, telling stories about the divine feminine.
I just want to say I've been looking forward to this talk for, I don't know, since we first connected 2 or 3 months ago. Super, super, super excited. And I know there are many layers to this. One layer that I hope we can touch on at some point is also your connection to landscape and storytelling with landscape and that the connection of that to the divine feminine too. And anyway, so many ways we can go with this, but so you, when I asked you to be part of this symposium, you came up with this topic, traces of her, connecting with the divine feminine through story. And maybe we could just start with, what does that mean to you? Why does that come up for you? I'm asking a whole bunch of questions at the same time. I'm sorry, but answer it in whatever way you like. I would love to hear why does this matter to you? I know I can feel it in you that this does matter to you clearly on many levels, and maybe we can just start with that. What's your passion about with this, and what does it mean for you?
Mm-hmm. So the title comes from a project that I'm involved in, which is a beautiful duo with a Scottish storyteller named Kirsten Milliken, and together we form the Hedge Sisters. And since 2020, we've been telling stories together, and we've both been very drawn to telling her story. So to find interesting stories about feminine characters, about goddesses, women, natural beings, and try and tap into the wisdom of the divine feminine. And then the title just appeared to me. It was like Traces of Her, and we did a 4-part series over the course of a year, where every few months we would have an online storytelling event about one specific element. Say we started with water, I believe, and then we found stories connected, to that. And so stories about water, about oceans, about, there was the mother of the sea, and there was the fisher woman, and there were all kinds of stories with the watery element. And we would weave in song and meditation. And then the next one was fire, and then we had earth and air. And this year, what we did was Places of Her, which there's one installment left. I'll talk about that later maybe and tell people where to find it, where we continued in this vein, but we looked at specific places, place types, such as mountains, forests, and bogs so far. And the last one we'll do is shores. And so this has been going on, and I dearly love Kirsten and our work, and it's deepened my connection to something I already knew was there, So I've been an artist and freelancer for over 10 years as a singer-songwriter mostly. I have a theater background. And I also I gave theater trainings and workshops and I've done all kinds of things. And I've done women's circles. I've done my own training in, all these aspects of being a woman. And then all of a sudden it just came together with my artistic work in this way that I found, wow, even in the storytelling world, the narrative about the hero still sort of seems to be at the forefront, which is odd because, I mean, yeah, the feminine is on the rise and still we keep telling those old stories. And so we keep enforcing something, most of us unaware, because they're great stories and I don't want to erase them, yet I want to balance them. And so, yeah, there's been a lot of rich work going on, which I'm excited to share as we go on.
Thank you so much for that background. This is the first time I'm meeting you, and so I'm really loving, to kind of get a picture of how all of these things have woven together for you and have come together to create what you are expressing into the world. And it's just absolutely beautiful. And I resonate with so many pieces. It's like, oh, I want to ask her about this and this and this. I guess what's coming to me is something that you said a little bit earlier before we started recording that really just kind of lit me up, and that was you were speaking about storytelling as medicine. And I would love to delve deeply into that because I think that kind of encompasses a lot of what you've been saying. And so how is storytelling medicine from your perspective?
First of all, storytelling works with symbols, right? So one example being the hero's journey. Some of the listeners might be familiar with that. Joseph Campbell's brilliant discovery of, you have the hero or heroine and they go into the underworld, they face some kind of a challenge and they gain a treasure and they come back up and then they are faced with the ordinary world again and they have to see, is this something that I can now carry forward? And you find these symbols in all stories, like everywhere. And so, for example, just to try and narrow this down, because I know this talk could be like hours, but with my work and the divine feminine, so for example, you have the chalice, Holy Grail, the tower. It's all different symbols pointing to the feminine womb. And so if I do tell a story without my even, doing anything special, these symbols are there and they work their own magic in the subconscious. So that's one aspect. The second aspect that's really dear to me and a lot of storytellers that I know is that storytelling is personal. It happens between the listener and the teller. And it is done, there's a Scottish wonderful proverb that I often get mixed up. Don't tie me to the order, but it's something like stories are told face to face, eye to eye, and heart to heart. So the story always changes depending on who's there. And it also changes depending on my state of being in that moment. And it's very different, I find, from theater. And I can compare the two, given my background. And so even though I might rehearse a story, still I have to remain open to whatever wants to come through me. Different wordings, slight changes, pauses in different pauses at different times, interactions with the audience, and there's a medicine in that in itself. And third aspect is that, you know, we all have different stories that we've lived, right? So, and we all have different stories that we tell ourselves about who we are. And then that meets a story that is told, and it will call forth different aspects of growth, of healing that the specific soul needs at that specific time. And I've done storytelling gigs where I would tell a story about the divine feminine, and then I would pause and invite my audience to meditate for a while, for example, or to share with a partner, or even share, if somebody felt called to do so, with the wider audience. What has this brought up? Or, you know, do you know this kind of thing that the heroine or the hero faces in that moment? Do you know this? Like, how does this imply? What does this imply for you? And the richest discussions come from that. And the deepest sort of, explorations, because it isn't framed as therapy, to be blunt. But it is art. It is an artistic process. And the person themselves can decide how deeply to jump in or to just sit back and just listen. And that's, everything is allowed. And that's something I find very, very healing with it. Yeah, if there's good storytelling going on.
Yeah, I was getting chills, like on the verge of crying from so many things you've been sharing. It's amazing. One of the many questions I feel coming up for me is, can you give some examples of when you talk about the hero's journey and the typical stories that get told compared with the stories related to the divine feminine that you focused on? Can you give us like a little bit of a comparison? I think some of it is obvious, but maybe not so obvious, and I would love to hear more. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I just see what comes up. Well, let's stick with Hygeia, why don't we?
Oh.
So for those who those who don't know, just briefly, I want to share how I met you, Martha.
Mhm.
So I have a goddess project that I've been doing for half a year now. Because sometime last summer, I just received a download telling me, okay, you have to do this. You have to do 12 months of encountering a different goddess every month, and then tell a story about her. And so I've created something in my shop where people can buy this package, and I embarked, and I had no idea about the goddesses that would show up. Like, I'm not a planner person. So I was just like, okay, let's channel this, which has on one hand led to a lot of work that I wasn't expecting, but on the other hand, to magnificent encounters. And I had not heard about Hygeia before. And and I was faced with, okay, which goddess is going to be the next? And I think it was in March. And then in February, a friend posted something on Facebook about Hygeia, this goddess, right? And I was like, oh, what's this? And I dived in, and then I researched, and I went really far with my research. And I found you, Martha. I found this whole astrological side to this goddess, which I had no idea about. I did not know that asteroids are named after goddesses. And your video just, sparked so many things. And then I just reached out and asked, could we meet? Is this possible? Can you share? And then we did, and all these things developed. And so what I found with Hygeia is that, so for those who don't know her, she is the goddess of preventive medicine, right? So she's the one to turn to in yourself and outside of yourself when you want to guard your health, as opposed to battling illness because it's already got you. And then I researched her, and the first thing that you find is, oh, she was Asclepius's wife. And Asclepius is known to many more people because he's the guy with the staff and the snakes that you have on the apothecaries' signs in Germany, and, you know. Okay, and because I've been on this path for a while, whenever I hear, okay, this goddess is the wife or the sister or the daughter of this god, my ears start ringing, and I'm like, okay, who says this and since when? And what was she before? And Hygeia is a great example. Because you can find the traces of her in ancient Crete. And that's way before Asclepius ever appeared on the scene. And on Crete, there was a temple where they had goddess worship, and they had snakes. And the snakes, according to the research I found, and anybody knowing better, please do share. Like, I'm not, I don't know it all. This is just the stage that I'm at with my research. But apparently they kept the snakes as a kind of a warning system, because on Crete you had a lot of earthquakes and flooding and fires, and you name it, it was there. And the first to know were the snakes. And when they left, people knew, okay, let's leave the house. We'd have to go to open plains to try and survive. So that's a very, back to symbols, that's a very preventive measure to take.
Wow. I did not know about that. That is amazing. Yes.
You kind of, I think you get my drift, and this is just one example. And then all of a sudden she's sort of exported to the mainland Greece, and then all of a sudden you find, Hygeia was worshipped in Asclepius's temples, and all these things. And with this specific example, maybe I can share a little about the work that I then did, because there are no stories that I could find about this goddess. There's tons about Asclepius, but nothing about her. And so I had to go really deep. And I found an account about the statesman Pericles, who apparently rebuilt Athena's temple on the Acropolis. And there's a tiny, tiny mention about how do you say that in English? A craftsman employed at the temple who had an accident, fell, and became really ill. And then all work came to a standstill because the other workers said, no, this is a bad omen, we will not continue. And then apparently Pericles went to the temple, into the sanctuary, where there's a huge golden statue of Athena, and he slept in the temple. And in his dream, Athena appeared and gave him all the instructions how to heal this worker, which he then did, and the worker was healed and work continued. And it is said that he, in the end, put up a statue of Athena Hygeia in honor of this incident. But this is like 3 sentences worth in a massive text about ancient Greece. And then I go, well, this is cool. And I dive in and I dream into this. And then I created a story from this, because I found another symbol, which is the temple sleep, the so-called, which we know happened in Asclepius temples and also in Hygeia temples, which is somebody who was ill would go into the temple, extensively wash their body, which is also a very preventive measure, given our view of those times, they didn't wash, did they? And then they would sleep in the temple, asking for guidance in their dreams from the god or goddess about how to heal themselves. So I find this in that story, and that's what I mean by traces of her. And when I go all the way back, it also points to Crete being a site where they did temple sleep. Period.
Wow, that is amazing. Thank you so much for giving that example, because I was wondering, what your perspective was going to be on that particular question that Martha asked about, because I love Joseph Campbell and I love all the stories. And then, sometime later in my life, I started realizing, like, okay, but they're all very masculine oriented. Like, where are all the goddess stories? And so what I also love about this particular example that you gave was that it was about Hygeia. And as an herbalist, I feel very resonant with her. One of the very first herbal books that I bought decades ago was called Hygeia, written by Parvati. I can't remember her last name at the moment, but it was a book about women's health. And it was kind of one of those books that was shunned by the mainstream as, a little bit too out there. So I love that was the example that you gave. And a question comes up for me, and I don't know if this is a silly question, but I wonder if you hear this or if you see this a lot in your work. You talked a lot about the symbolism. And I happen to be one of those people who I've always loved mythology. I've always loved that kind of storytelling. But I'm also very literal. And I don't catch the symbolism until it's pointed out to me. And I'm wondering if you have either like some advice for people who are really interested in this, but just aren't tuned into the symbolism. Like, how can we tune into that symbolism so that we can understand those deeper meanings, that are kind of below the surface? Or does it even matter?
The first impulse that came was, does it even matter? So yes, at the moment, I find myself on this path of wanting to understand, symbols and find the connections. But it has a specific purpose for me of telling the stories better. And one thing I love about storytelling is precisely this: we do not have to analyze them. Like, a good teller will have you magically enveloped without going, and I know what the story means. That to me is a distinction between a good teller and somebody who's still on their path. Is, can I, as a teller, step back enough to trust that the story will do its thing in each person according to where they are at? And that might also mean I have to endure the fact that somebody is triggered. Big topic. Different story, and it might mean that I go away going, oh, what did they take? I can't tell. But it's not my job. My job is to put the story to them well and to tell it from my heart as well as I'm able at that point. As to advice, I'm not a great advice giver, but what I found from my own experience is that story will take you by the hand if you are open. So if you find yourself even asking this question, Vanessa, then my instinct says, well, you're already, like, you're on your way. Like, trust that stories will come at the appropriate moment in the appropriate way, without you having to grasp them or go and read lots of books on symbolism.
That makes so much sense. And as a naturopath, someone who uses a lot of different healing modalities, I can kind of relate it to that, in that there are so many levels of healing. And I also have to trust that if I'm doing my job well, then the person that I'm working with will receive the healing on whatever level they are at and whatever healing they need at that particular time. And it's not really my job to say, oh, well, there's more healing here, or there's another level, because I have to meet them where they are. And the medicine is going to meet them where they are and give them what they need in that specific moment. And so I love the way that you have described storytelling, doing the exact same thing.
Oh, I wholeheartedly agree. And I love this talk. Thank you so much. This is so much fun.
I'm having I'm having a bazillion thoughts and feelings, but I think there are 2 or 3 points that I wanted to bring up. One is that in my work with goddesses and with astrology and with all kinds of things, one of my biggest values in it is emphasizing the power of story, the power of narrative. So in the astrology world, there are, I would say I don't know, the majority of the astrology world that I'm familiar with tends to take the myths associated with various planetary bodies and repeats those stories over and over again, as we think they were told at whatever point we think they were told. So like, for example, Saturn, right? There's this very typical approach to Saturn as being associated with patriarch, with the domineering kind of violent narrative. And so, for example, I gave a talk not that long ago about Saturn as yin, and Saturn actually being related to the feminine principle, and Saturn being a holder of structure and space, but in a gentle, very subtle way. And what's important to me about that isn't so much like which version is right or wrong, but it's more the recognition that whatever meaning we choose to give to a story has actual impact on our health, on our emotional well-being, all kinds of like for example, in astrology, I've seen so many people look at a chart and say, oh my God, Pluto is going to blah, blah, blah to my blah, 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 or Saturn is going to blah, blah, blah to my blah, 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 or even Hygeia is about to conjunct my whatever. And actually people can have panic attacks and actually have, major anxiety because of the story that they think is being told by the astrology. And if you just do the tiniest, simplest thing of redoing the narrative, it's a whole different world, right? And so then the other part of that brings in for me also that feels so important and so alive, and I would love your thoughts on this, is to me, myth and story are living beings as opposed to static statues or something, right? So like Sharon Blackie talks a lot about this. And I'm sure you're familiar with her, Katrina. I don't know, Vanessa, do you know who Sharon Blackie is? Yeah. So a lot of us know her, and she does lots of story and landscape related stuff around the feminine. But it feels so important that to me, that we continue to be story like the we are story, as opposed to there's a story we read in a book and we retell it over and over again the way that we think it was told. And also to me it feels like there needs to be a balance, that we don't want to say, well, actually the myth of Saturn is this thing that I just made up. I think a balance in there is to recognize what Saturn has been told as, and then maybe to feel in our own ways how that myth can then be alive in this moment. Anyway, that's a whole big topic, but I would love your thoughts on any of that.
Okay. Wonderful. Great. Wow. Okay. First, I'm fascinated by the fact that oral storytelling is resurfacing in these times. In Great Britain, very strongly. Absolutely amazing. I'm so grateful I was led to Scotland, which led me to open up this whole storytelling thing for myself. And now I'm discovering the community in Germany, which is also existent, but we've started a bit later. But it's my belief that this is precisely because in consciousness, we are now at a stage where we understand that the fixing on stuff, such as writing down story, is helpful only to a certain extent. So oral storytelling is the oldest art form we have. My own teacher, Daniel Allison, says humans are storytelling apes. And since time immemorial, we've sat around fires and we have shared stories. And these stories were then committed to memory. And they were also allowed to shapeshift according to the level of consciousness at the time and the context. And this is what I'm finding on this goddess journey, is context is becoming so much more important to me than it has ever been. And I want to give, again, maybe a specific example, because I feel that narrows it down enough and makes it maybe more tangible for people listening. So the last goddess I have been working with was Mary Magdalene, because I felt, okay, Easter is coming up and she's knocking. And she's been part of my life for a long time, surfacing at interesting times, bringing her own medicine to my life, teaching me different things. And now this was a very deep encounter. And I did an extensive research, like I went all the way in. And I found that context here is a very important thing. I had no idea before I started this research that there are many, many more testaments than the 4 that we know in the Bible. The Gnostic texts found at Nag Hammadi in mid-century, last century in Egypt, are incredible. And along with those findings, there has been found a Gospel of Mary Magdalene. And diving into this and researching this, I found that what happened is that the 4 Gospels we know simply had the luck of being framed the way that the Romans wanted the story told. So a story is one thing, and who tells it is just as important. Who tells it and why? And with Mary Magdalene, I found that there's so many, and great shout out to all the beautiful souls who have done work on this goddess before, because it's amazing, from channeled texts to science, like to the detail, footnotes and all. And I've come away from this specific storytelling with the information that Christ, without Mary Magdalene, does not make sense. And they knew it. Both of them knew it. Why am I saying this? And this goes out with all respect. Whatever you believe is fine. This is only my world, my findings. But they reenacted an ancient story, and it is the story of the sun god diving into the realms of death, resurrecting through the powers of a goddess. And if you go back long enough, you find from Isis and Osiris to many, many others, there is the same symbolism being used. And we have had I don't want to call it a misfortune because everything is destined, but this has shaped the past 2,000 years much more strongly than we are aware. Much more strongly. That this story has been told to us only halfway. And when you read the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, it's the most beautiful thing. Because it makes apparent she received his teachings that the Christ is inside us. The death and resurrection happens within us. And we do not need somebody else to do it for us. And if you, from my point of view, if you read the Bible in a specific way, you find that it's still in there too, but it's really, really hidden. But this is the mystery. And if you leave her out, you leave out 50%. And this has shaped our world, and this is at the core of everything to me. Every struggle that we are facing at the moment with whatever you want to call it, awakening or rising or re-becoming the one, if we do not find this trace of her, of the feminine powers, of the feelingness, of the sensual, I could do a whole talk on Mary Magdalene and the fact that what's hidden behind the prostitute framing is a sensuality, is a sacred sexuality that is nature. And we have suppressed it, or we have believed that it is evil. And we have been hoodwinked into destroying the planet because we have been told a story in a very one-sided way. So that might answer some of your questions or open up more, I don't know. But this is the most recent thing to me. And it's just, I'm so grateful that I'm allowed to go on this path. And what Mary Magdalene has brought to me this time was a massive awakening from, blaming the masculine side or a perception that, okay, now we have to put women on, women are better and wow, we've been mistreated so badly and all this. And I've moved into, wow, we have to now become one. We are equal. We are, and I found a beautiful book that I want to recommend to anybody interested in this, and it is called The Forbidden Female Speaks by Pamela Cribb. And I'm privileged to enter a project where I get to do an audiobook, make an audiobook out of it. And it is a channeled text from Mary Magdalene, and it focuses exactly on this, on both the masculine and the feminine having wounds that we can only solve if we address the opposite sex within us to the biological sex that we have been given, or whichever that we identify as. And it's powerful and magical, and please read it.
Wow, that I just had chills, like literally all through my body as you were, speaking to Mary Magdalene's story, and as someone who grew up Catholic and just really, deeply steeped in the stories of the Bible. And, at that time, during childhood, not really really even catching the patriarchal lens, that is told through. But later on, like wondering, okay, well, who is Mary Magdalene? And where is her story here? Why is there so little told about who she is and why she just appears there? And so I love that you're bringing that out, and the book recommendation, I'm definitely going to go. And can you say the name and the author one more time, just so that we are sure to get that?
I will. Yes, the book is called The Forbidden Female Speaks, by Pamela Cribb, or Pamela Kribbe. I think she is she's from the Netherlands. And please stay tuned, because there will be an audiobook, both in English and in German, with my beautiful voice, coming when we manage to do this and sort of talk about how to set it up. But I'm so excited, because it's powerful and beautiful, and please, everybody read it. Mm-hmm. Sorry,
no,
I just wanted to respond to you, Vanessa, because I share, like, you were talking, Martha, about, story. We are story. And that's also something I'm experiencing with Mary Magdalene, because you see, I am the daughter of two Lutheran reverends. Both my parents studied theology. My father led a parish for 20 years. My mother did, marriages and funerals and whatever. And Mary Magdalene has made me face, what kind of a story do I still think I am? And there's this whole, like, every goddess that I work with shows up in my life in so powerful ways. And over Easter, I went to Taizé, which is a French Christian community that is very well known in Europe. And that used to mean a lot to me. And I felt, I need to go there. I need to replenish my soul and all these concepts. And I arrived, and it didn't work. I arrived there and I didn't feel a thing. I could not relate anymore. And the strongest feeling I had when I was sitting there in the garden, carving a Mary Magdalene statue, because I carve one goddess each month as well. And that's when I felt something. But sitting in that church, I had become a different story, literally. And it's been quite a purge. And my body has really had some work to do. I was quite ill last week because this had to move out. This one-sided masculine Christianity, not including the body, not letting joy come through. For me, it just doesn't work anymore. And I have to address this, or else I'm gonna not be able to move forward. And so I can strongly relate. And yeah, I just want to invite everybody, no matter what your beliefs are, you please do keep them and open up the lens, because it's even more magnificent than you've been told. The story is much more beautiful, much more life-giving. And yeah, I just wish that to everybody, no matter what the belief story is, that they find powerful in themselves.
One of the things coming up for me that I was feeling so passionate about, I wanted to say, it's related to what you're talking about. When you're describing especially the Mary Magdalene story, I feel this rush of energy wanting to move through my body, right? Like, a lot of this feels very body centered. And so there are a couple layers there for me. One is, it feels to me like there's a parallel shift when we engage with storytelling, when we engage with even just being with stories and narrative as ourselves. I mean, that in and of itself is a powerful shift to be making, but it also, I think, can bring us into our knowledge through our bodies and through our being that we can't necessarily get through the mind, right? And like to let the life force of existence be what's driving things or like moving us, as opposed to thoughts. And also to let our bodies be the actor or the actress, as opposed to our brain. Not that our brain is bad, not that our thoughts are bad, but right, like, and then the other part is when you are talking about Mary Magdalene and how Jesus wouldn't, I might be getting what you just said slightly off, but I think what you said is that without Mary Magdalene, Jesus wouldn't have been Jesus. Is that what you said? Something like that, close. Well, anyway, bottom line, what I'm also feeling in me is that when I engage with the stories of the divine feminine, which I do a lot in my own work, like I'm channeling a book called The Goddesses Speak. And I lead a goddess series, right? And when I hear a story where the feminine is relegated to quote unquote just the wife or just the sister or just the daughter or whatever, and her story isn't fleshed out, I feel in my own body like myself getting kind of shut down. But then when I engage with the goddess as the full goddess, that is her, I often literally, like this morning, today, we happen to be recording this in April of 2023. And today, this afternoon, I'm giving a talk on the goddess Eris and her counterpart Xena with the Eris Xena Kuiper belt object in astrology. But I'm feeling this literally in my prayers today, the power of existence was trying to move through my whole body, because that's a big part of what the Eris archetype is for me. And so it was like suddenly I could come alive, like all of me could come alive through engaging with this goddess, as opposed to a more patriarchal version of her. I had a male astrologer say one time to me, actually, well, anyway, long story. Basically, he said, "Sorry, ladies, Eris is a woman scorned." That was how he summed up the archetype of Eris. And I was very offended for very many reasons in that moment, but I kept my calm. And my response to that is I'm giving this talk. That's how I'm channeling my anger, is I'm going to give my own version of it. And I'm going to let that power, that full power that she is, come through me, right? Not in an angry way, and it's actually very Eris-like. It's like, I have rage, and I'm going to channel it as sacred rage by being a voice of that power and that truth for me, that I feel is in service of the greater good, right? So there's something about like suddenly finding traces of her, right? I think it's the same idea. And yeah, and if I didn't have access to that, I would feel shut down, as opposed to literally feeling like the power of existence, which is what we are. Yeah. Anyway, I'm very passionate, in case you can't tell.
That makes three of us, I do believe.
Yeah. Feel free to comment.
I just wanted to mention that there have been three kind of areas that have been lit up for me throughout this discussion, that you have brought forth for me. Number one, just the need for the balance in storytelling between the masculine and the feminine, and that it's not about, okay, everything has been very patriarchal, so now we have to go to the other extreme and be very matriarchal. It's about the balance. and the weaving together of both of them. And the second piece that really spoke to me, and I think it's because I just haven't heard it in this way before, and both you, Martha, and Katrina have spoken to this in a really clear way, and that is that stories are not static. And though I think we all know this, it's again something, because the last 2,000 years have been very focused on the masculine. That's kind of what I grew up feeling and thinking, was that a story is a story. This is the way it was. This is the story, and you can't change that story. Maybe you can tell a new story, but that story is that story. And so, when you spoke of it as shape-shifting, that really made so much sense to me, that stories evolve, stories can shift and change, and there are pieces of stories that can come out that were there all along, but maybe we just didn't see them. And so that whole idea of stories being able to shapeshift, and that we can direct that, or we can express that shapeshifting. And then the third piece, which Martha, you were just speaking to, but Katrina, I think you kind of brought us to this place of feeling the story in the body, of having that piece kind of being downplayed through storytelling in the past, or in some segments of society, where now we can really bring that element of storytelling through our bodies. And I'm thinking, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but what's coming to me is that is maybe one of the most powerful ways that we can connect with our own divine feminine, is through allowing those stories to express through our bodies, to tap into the feelings that come through these stories.
Vanessa, I'm going to jump in and say something, because you won't say this about yourself, because I know that about you. You're very modest. So, but of course, what's coming up for me is your own work and your work with body knowing and movement, and the talk that you gave and the workshop you're doing on belly dance as sacred practice, and having the divine feminine, having belly dance be one avenue for having the divine feminine move through us. Yes, so I want to insert that, because I knew you wouldn't say it.
Well, thank you, Martha, for speaking to that. And yes, I do come to that through a different lens, but I think it's the same place. Is that right, Katrina?
I feel, yes, definitely. And what came to mind already when you spoke, Martha, was that I also find the process of storytelling is medicine in itself. What do I mean by that? I've taught courses over the years during COVID online, which worked very well, which astounded me. But storytelling is an art form that is easier to transfer into the web than others. And I taught courses, and I found that the process of somebody embarking on their own journey as a teller will unearth so many hidden aspects, feelings, aspects of their soul, of their personality. And this is one thing that I also see with oral storytelling coming back. We are embracing our own, how do you say that in English? Our own power We are empowering ourselves to speak up again and to allow our bodies to speak again. And going back to Mary Magdalene, like with erasing her has paved the way for the narrative to be our bodies are either evil or useless, where they are actually instruments for us to fully become humanly divine. And that's what I meant when I said, to me, the Christ and the whole resurrection business without Mary Magdalene doesn't make sense, because the mystery is to be a humanly divine. We're souls having a human experience, and we can at the same time be creators. But if we erase the body from that picture, it doesn't work. And so I wholeheartedly agree. And to anybody wanting to learn storytelling, please reach out. Though I say so myself, I know what I'm about. And I love teaching this because I feel it needs so many more tellers. We need bazillions of people able to tell a story well and to feel it and to embody it and to put it out there without an agenda, without the I know what it means and I'm going to show you what it means and you have to believe what I say. No, I'm going to lay this out like just like a beautiful set of clothing, and you will choose which sweater or sock to pick up and put on. And I love this work, so I'd be so happy if from this some people would find their way to me. And this is the beauty of it. We can do this across the globe. Like you could be wherever you want, and I can teach you what I know, and you can go forth and tell the stories that inspire you. And that's also something I found is the beauty of, having a group of 5 people and all 5 will go into completely different directions of what sparks what makes them come alive, what kinds of stories, what kind of settings. And it's just, it blew my mind every time, because I don't know the outcome, but I know how to unlock stuff to assist people in daring to become a storyteller.
Yes. I want to transition to you telling us more about your work and where to find, and the workshop you're actually offering as part of the symposium on Friday, June 9th, both live and recorded. Right. So I want to talk about that. But before we wrap up, I want to say the other thing that's coming to me that's feeling so important. I think you would agree. You tell me. I feel like the importance of storytelling is also that it's an avenue for the earth to speak as us. That's another thing I'm feeling in my body. It's like, so I channel, and I channeled now 3 books that are published and 3 that aren't published yet. But one of them is called Gaia Speaks. And one of the things that book talks about is that the earth is trying, literally, we are co-creators with her, right? So I feel like storytelling is one of the avenues that maybe she has, or the earth has, to literally be us through us, because we are the earth. And so and that makes me think about your series with the bogs and the mountains and the shore and all of that, the story of landscape, which is a completely other additional topic that I would love to talk to you more about another time. But that is just so exquisitely beautiful and powerful and needed. And I don't know if you have like a brief feeling or thought about any of that.
Oh, yes. And I have a specific project that I also want to recommend to people, which is very dear to my heart as well. So I don't know if you have heard of the Earth Charter.
No.
Many people haven't. Do look it up, the Earth Charter. And it is a framework for a sustainable future. Long story, I won't go into it. However, it has several pillars or principles that it rests on, and everything from, you know, fair economy to education for everybody, you know, the biological side of sustainability, everything. And I've been an Earth Charter ambassador for nigh on 10 years. And then I stumbled across a beautiful man from Spain named Grian Kotanda, and he has gone and collected stories from all over the world, sharing one commonality, and that is that they promote a unified worldview. They promote the knowledge that we are all one and we are all connected, as opposed to the separation narrative.
Wow.
And this has grown and keeps growing and expanding. And it's called the Earth Stories Collection. And if you Google that, like the earthstoriescollection.org, you find a collection of, I think now 70 stories from all mythological backgrounds. The attempt is, or the vision, the aim is to collect stories from every country, from every culture, every language. As long as they have this, you know, we are all one, we are all connected. And this is exactly what you've been saying, Martha. This is, Gaia is reminding us that we have been operating under an illusion. We have been operating under a false story. And it is a story of power over and of separation and violence. But it is only a story. And the world view is shifting. And this collection is contributing to that. And there's a network, a growing network called the Earth Storytellers. So any storytellers listening, please do join us. And they are beautiful, beautiful stories, very different from each other. And the process is also very respectful and beautiful, especially around, you know, what do you call that in English? Cultural appropriation, I think. You know, so original people from Australia are being invited, and the process is, can we find a way to honor your stories and bring them into this without appropriating them or changing them? So often it's also a matter of translation. There are some stories in there from China, from provinces that have never been translated into English, and all these things. And that's gorgeous, and that's going on. And some of my teaching work is also based on that. So I teach people how to become an earth storyteller, because I also work with a lot of nature educators, people, you know, promoting sustainability, working with kids or teenagers, working in nature conservation, all kinds of stuff. And so that's also an area that I'm very passionate about, which came before, so to speak, and led me to now focusing on the divine feminine, because to my understanding, this imbalance is at the root of all of this. But so that's part of that. Yeah.
I'm so excited. Oh, wow. I mean, I'm having so many reactions internally. That's so amazing. I need to connect with that for sure. Yes. Wow. Thank you. Vanessa, before we start to close out, do you have any other thought or feeling or something you want to ask? Or
well, you know, as somebody who works, you know, with nature and with natural modalities and therapies and healing, that really touches my heart. And so thank you. Thank you for those resources. Thank you for the work that you're doing to help bring about the balance, you know, and the healing that we need through that balance. And I'm really excited to hear more about how people can directly, you know, work with you or contact you and your workshop.
Yes. So maybe in chronological order. So with the Hedge Sisters, with the duo that I mentioned in the beginning, we have one installment left of our current series, and it's going to happen on May 9th, 7 p.m. UK. And you can find us on Eventbrite, the Hedge Sisters.
2023, right? So
yes.
this video will will run in June of
Oh yes,
2020.
that's right. Okay, sorry.
So
Yeah. Anyway, but we are working on the continuation of this work. So check out thehedgesisters.com or find us on Eventbrite to see what the next online events are. And it will be, yeah, a continuation of telling stories about powerful women and spirits and goddesses. Yeah, we don't quite know yet what, but probably a continuation of the places of her theme. So there's lots more landscapes, right? Like deserts and stuff. And by the way, if there's still time, I would be most humbled to share a short story to just give an example to people, but that we can do that in the end. And then, yes, my workshop on June 9th. Is that right, Martha?
June 9th, 2023.
Yes, June 9th.
But it'll be recorded also. Yes.
It will be recorded, so you can check it out later. But it's an exploration into the things we have discussed. I will be telling a story, and you will, with my guidance, be able to dive into what medicine this story holds for you. And there will be meditation, maybe some journaling. I will also listen to what wants to happen in the space to really make sure that it's coming from the now rather than my, concept. But it will be a mix of personal exploration and powerful story and sharing to the extent that people are comfortable.
I can't
Yeah, and so my own work you can find on my website, which is catriona.blanke.de. There is an English version of the site. However, at the moment, my main focus is in German. I'm building my English stuff, so please bear with me. And for anybody speaking German, please check out my Goddess project, which you can find in my shop on my music website, which is catriona.net. And yeah, it's never too late to embark on that. And yeah, you can order my newsletter and stay informed. And you can find me on Facebook, Catriona Blanke Storyteller. And I get a sense that from this discussion, new ideas might develop. So if you follow Martha, you might find me along the way at some point.
I think so too. I feel lots percolating. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I just on a logistical level, I want to say that so if this workshop is calling to you, there are 3 different ways you can access it. And like I said, it will be live on Friday, June 9th, 2023, in the morning, Pacific time, evening for you, Katrina. But then it will also be recorded, and so you can access it anytime in the future. You can buy just that workshop if it's the one and only one that you're feeling called to in the Rebecoming the One set of paid workshops, or you can buy all of the 13-ish workshops for Rebecoming the One as a bundle. Or a third option would be if you are feeling really called specifically to the 3 workshops that are going to be held on June 9th for the Divine Feminine, which includes this workshop with Katrina. It includes the belly dancing with Vanessa, and it also includes a beautiful, amazing workshop with Kelly Hunter, a very well-known astrologer who it's an incredible honor that she's doing this workshop, and she's going to be focusing on the cosmic feminine, specifically looking at the moon, Venus, and black moon Lilith in the astrology chart. And that's a really wonderful workshop for people who know nothing about astrology and people who are professional practicing astrologers. So those are the 3 that would be included in the Divine Feminine bundle. So those are the 3 ways you could access this Katrina's workshop. And I'm so excited that I get to be there, and hopefully Vanessa, you can be there too. It'll be really wonderful. Great. Yeah, so do you have a short story you want to close out with?
Yes, I do. When I was walking out there in the rain today, I sort of asked, okay, what, and I did get an answer. So picture a vast desert. Red, hot sand wherever you look, rocks, and a blue sky with a scorching sun. To the untrained eye, this landscape is dead. There's nothing there. But for those with eyes to see, it is alive, very much alive. There are reptiles, little plants, and there is the wind above the desert, whirling, twirling about. To one side, there's a formation of rocks, and next to the rocks, there is a very old, gnarled tree. And at the foot of that tree, there is a tiny well. Just a few droplets of water, so tiny, but it's there, and it's alive. One morning, the little well woke up from a sound going, little well, have you heard? Have you heard? It was the little wind coming to give her the news. Have you heard? Oh my God, the water hole, across there, the water levels are sinking, and the animals, they're having to really crane their necks to actually reach the water. It's terrible, terrible, terrible. And with that, the wind had disappeared. When the little well heard that, she was so sad. How terrible for the animals. I have to do something. I have to help. And with that, she reached down into the ground. Deeply, she drank from her own depths and spat the water in the direction of the waterhole, only to see it falling short by 1 meter or so, dropping in the sand, disappearing. Oh, but she was exhausted, so sad and exhausted that she fell asleep. And she was woken the next day by a sound. Little well, oh, little well, have you heard? Have you heard? Have you heard? The water levels, they're sinking even more. Now there's just a tiny puddle on the bottom of the waterhole, and the animals, they're having to creep into the mud, and oh, it's so dangerous. What if they get stuck? And with that, the little wind had moved on its way to bring the news to somebody else. When the little well heard that, her heart became so heavy, and she thought, oh, I didn't try hard enough yesterday, but I will today. I will help. Somebody has to do something. And then she reached down into the ground, down, even further down than yesterday. And she spat into the direction of the waterhole. But the water didn't even reach as far as yesterday. Halfway, it fell into the sand, creating a sparkling rainbow before disappearing. Oh, the little well felt terrible. Felt as though she wasn't good enough, not doing enough, but she was exhausted. So she fell asleep. She felt like she had not slept long at all when, little well, the wind was back, and he said, the animals are leaving. They are leaving the area. There's no more water. They're going through the desert. So dangerous. What if they die? And the wind had gone. Little well was so sad. And she got all her resolve, and she said, I'm going to try harder today. I will do it. I will reach as far down as no well has ever reached, and I will fill that water hole. Just you wait. The water fell right at her feet and disappeared into the sand with a sizzling sound. When the little well saw this, she felt her little well heart break in two, and she decided to cease flowing. And just as she was about to cease, she heard a voice. Little well. It was the old tree standing right next to her. Little well, are you actually wanting to give up? Well, yes, I'm useless, ain't I? I just, there's no point to my existence. I can't even save the animals. It's better I weren't there. Little well, said the tree. Look beside you, right there on your side, look. And the little well looked around and she saw right next to her, there was a tiny flower. It was one of those roses of Jericho. You might know them, gray and shriveled and dusty, and they don't look anything much, but when water reaches them, they bloom, and they give up their seeds for the wind to carry them away. So what? Said the well. If you cease to flow, said the tree, this little flower will die. Do you want that? Well, no, but there's no but. It isn't your job to water the whole desert. The water hole isn't your job. That flower, however, is your job. It is said that the little well continued to flow, and it is said that the rose of Jericho bloomed in the brightest, beautiful colors, and it is said that when the little wind came again, it picked up the seeds and carried them to a faraway land, where they sank into the ground and bloomed again. But that is a different story.
Wow. Now I'm really gonna cry. Ay.
That was beautiful. And you had me like in every word of that story. It was lovely. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And I think it gives us just a small glimmer of what really great storytelling is all about.
Yes.
Thank you. It's been a privilege and an honor. I've enjoyed this so much, and thank you for giving me the chance to share my gift, because that's what I'm here for. I really wish to have an impact and do what I can to help restore this balance. And thank you for all the work that you're doing. And Martha, oh, I look forward to everything. The whole symposium is going to be an amazing, magnificent ball.
I think so. I'm very excited about all of it. And yeah, I'm just kind of speechless after that story. Wow.
Just let it sink.
Yeah.
It will weave its own magic in its own time.
I feel it. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to, I can just feel there's lots more to come with you, with collaborating. I can imagine collaborations of the three of us and beyond. And but June 9th, that's the next thing coming up. And to everybody watching, please join us if that's calling to you. It's like I'm on the verge of crying. I really cannot wait. It's so good. Thank you.